All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live event. I'm going to have the pleasure of speaking with Katie Murphy from Noticed, who's a social media manager who prides herself on story driven marketing. And we're going to be talking about how to find your brand voice through social media. So, without further ado, I would love to get started. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to leave in the comments where you're tuning in from and if you have any questions, because questions are good. So, thank you so much. And I'm going to pass the mic to Katie. All right. So, um, let's get started. Let's get started. I'm going to try to figure out if I can share this with my screen or not. But I guess I want to start off with you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what a brand voice is and why it even matters.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for your patience. So essentially, yeah, I'm Katie, as Danny said, and I think one thing I wanted to talk about first, or like just mention first, was I didn't plan to be a social media manager, and in fact, I studied history and archaeology at uni, which you can probably tell that I'm much more of an ancient person than a modern tech person. But now I've worked in social for 5 years, and about 6 months ago, was hired by Noticed to be a content creator, and I've recently had a bit of a promotion to be a social media manager, which means that I'm more of the analytics and strategy side. But yeah, enough about me. So essentially, brand voice is how your brand sounds when it speaks, and it's not what you say, but how you say it. It's your personality expressed in your tone, your language, even the rhythm of what you're saying. And I like to think about if your brand was a person, how would they talk at a dinner party, and would people want to sit next to them?
Okay, that's awesome. And if a brand has never really taken the time to define its voice before, what is step zero? Step one? Where should they start?
Yeah, so I've definitely been in this position before. My first job, there was no brand guidelines really, so I have had to start from step one before. But if you've never defined your voice before, you're probably winging it, and so is whoever's writing your content. So step one, I really think, is asking who are we and what do we stand for, and maybe then going into thinking about what's our tone when we're excited and what would it be when we mess up. But essentially, if your tone sounds different every day, that's a problem. So first steps would be what thinking about your values. What does your brand believe? And then your mission and purpose. Why do you exist? And then going further into that, the emotional tone. What do you want to make people feel? So from those things, I would start building out a mini tone toolkit, including maybe 3 words, 3 to 5 words on how you would describe your voice. So, are you helpful? Are you witty? Are you serious? Are you direct? Maybe like a few do's and don'ts. For example, we use contractions, we don't use jargon, or we do use British English, or we don't swear, things like that. So, knowing the values, the audience that you're looking to reach, and the role in the world sets the foundation.
That's amazing. I actually came across someone who posted about this recently, saying trying if you're having a hard time trying to really nail down your brand's tone of voice, to try to find a character that either you want to emulate or that your brand sounds like, and think about how they say things, the kind of things that they say, some of their mannerisms, to kind of all put that together into your tone of voice guidelines. And it's so funny because I actually did this. Being a brand manager at Surfer, I care a lot about how we're perceived externally and what
Yeah.
people think of when they think of Surfer. And I had this idea in my mind of what I thought we were giving. And I was like, oh, it's totally going to be this. So, like any adult in this generation, I double checked with GPT and I said, hey, have you heard of Surfer and this, that, and the other? What would you say our brand voice is like? And it was completely different from what I thought. So that just keeps me like, that makes me question like, okay, so how should we align? Are we giving what we think that we're giving? So I think a good
Yeah.
step would be like, I think they said we sound like Spock, like intelligent and detailed and methodical and like all of these things. And I'm like, yeah, but we're fun, right? Are we also fun? Are we also like relatable? Like, do people relate to Spock? It was like Spock and Jarvis. I was like, okay, so we're helpful, we're practical, but I think that's a nice sanity check. If you think you're giving something, just ask GPT. Ask someone external, objective, if it aligns.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
Uh,
kind of like asking your friends like 3 words to describe you. I think maybe like ask other people. I don't know what character I would want to be. Someone really sarcastic and funny, I think.
Absolutely. Um, so, what are some mistakes that brands make when they try to find their voice online, and what should they be doing instead?
Yeah, obviously we're all going to make mistakes. Everybody has those days. But I think number one mistake is thinking, let's just be funny. I think brand voice and personality isn't just being funny. It's not just jumping on a meme because it's trending. It's so much more to that. A second mistake probably would be copying other brands. And the example that I had picked out was we've probably all in our time been told, oh, we want to be more like Duolingo, or we want to be like, I don't know, Monzo Bank in the UK or something like that, unhinged. And it just doesn't work. I think the most recent example I can think of is Duolingo killed their mascot duo, rest in peace, but then he was brought back to life, so it's fine. And then a couple of days later, Lipton iced tea did rest in peach to its most popular flavor and then brought it back 2 days later. And people knew, like the audience knew immediately that it just wasn't on brand for them and they were just trying to copy Duo and it just didn't land well. So that's another mistake that I see. A third would be so writing for themselves, not their audience. I think, I don't know if it's because I'm a marketer, but I can tell when brands are trying to be salesy, when they're trying to push their sales. They're not thinking about what their audience wants, what their um, main pain points are, what they are struggling with. They just want to sell something. And I think it's really clear when a brand is not thinking for their audience. And I think a last one, it kind of goes beyond brand voice, but just trying to be everything everywhere all at once. Um, Again, when I started in social, the brand that I was working for wanted to be on, I think, 7 platforms, and I was the only social media manager. And it does, I guess it comes down to voice a little bit because then you have to think about, well, how am I going to be perceived across all of these different platforms? X is very different to LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever. I think a good example of someone doing that well is probably Monzo Bank. They have different voices for different platforms, but it all kind of comes under one roof. But if you're having to think about too many platforms all at once, then it's just going to melt your brain, I think. And I think maybe think of one or two first, get them down, and then expand.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think people often forget that not every person is on every single platform. And you do have chances to target different people, but when you're trying to create your voice, you have to keep in mind that it needs to be tailored. Because again, trying to capture everyone, like even I feel like, I mean, my platform of choice is TikTok, and the language that is used on TikTok is it's its own ecosystem. Like you have to know how to read and write differently on TikTok.
For
Um,
sure.
and
Yeah.
it's probably the same thing for X too. But I mean, definitely trying not to just have one brand voice that just blankets all of these platforms. Being able to be discerning to decide where are the people you're trying to talk to, and what
Mhm.
platform they're on, and then how to talk to them there as well, as also to factor that in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I had one comment here that I wanted to address.
Mhm.
Um, mm, 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 mm. What if we're starting a brand from scratch? Just one final sentence on that. Maybe they came in a little bit later, but what if you're trying to start a brand from scratch? What is one tip that you can give?
Yeah, I think again it goes back to that the kind of mini playbook almost of like a checklist. Try to find my like a your voice starter pack. Uh, First audience, who you're trying to reach, what are their pain points, and then start thinking about the personality that you want to convey. Maybe again, like Danny said, think of like the character that you want to be like, and then go into like the nitty gritty of the adjectives that you want to use, the emojis that are safe and not safe. And then I would always have like an emergency, what happens in an emergency section as well. So just some sort of starter pack, I think, would be great.
Wait, I want to hear more about that. What happens in an emergency?
Well,
Yes.
things like if suddenly like your brand comes into conflict, even if it's not like the biggest PR crisis in the world, but things like someone comments on your post saying, "Oh, my order didn't arrive in time and the customer service are being really rubbish." Like, how do you respond to that? Do you respond in kind of a humorous way, like Ryanair might do, or do you take it real seriously? And
Mm-hmm.
it's things like that.
Okay, so that should be built into your brand guidelines.
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I'll just repeat this just in case. We will attach the presentation in the comments, or we'll send it via email, one or the other, but you guys will have access to it. So don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. So Duolingo comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Duolingo comes up a lot because they've seemed to have cornered this market of outlandishness, outlandish behavior, sass, humor. They've even transcended ed tech and are now in pop culture in terms of like their relationship with Dua Lipa and all of these things. So I understand that a lot of people want to emulate that, but it will not work for everyone, and it doesn't need to either. So how do you adapt humor for more serious industries without losing credibility or sounding forced? And can you give us an example of someone you think that's doing it well?
Yeah. So I think serious industries can still use kind of a warmth and empathy and humor. It's whether you're working for like a boring quote unquote brand or not, you can still add that personality into your social media. I think my favorite example might be RSPB TikTok, if anyone's heard of that. So it's a bird charity in the UK, and they're like serious comms about maybe like wildlife and endangered animals and that kind of thing. But on TikTok, they know that their audience there are probably going to be on the younger side, although not specific to the younger side, but probably. And they want to be able to cater for that audience while still being able to get their message across. So they created Bird of the Week, a brilliant social media manager. I think her name is Yaz. And they do this like a Wheel of Fortune every week, and it might land on like goose or something. And then they'll do this really like bizarrely edited TikTok of the bird, and then people comment in it saying, "Oh, we want to learn more about finches next week," or something like that, or eagles. And that's done so well with their audience that they've now created a book called Bird of the Week, and it's got 52 birds in it, one for every week of the year. And the proceeds that that book sells will go straight back into the charity for the birds. So I think it's a really good example of like what would have been perceived maybe a few years ago of being like a serious charity. I mean, they are still a serious charity, but like a more serious business who do humor really well for their brand goals.
And look how they were able to take the interest that they saw from TikTok and translate that into a physical product that in turn creates revenue for their donations to for their charity to keep it afloat. That's amazing.
Yeah. No,
Huh.
it's really good. I'd recommend it. Recommend watching.
Yeah. The one thing that comes to mind for me of a company that's doing it well, um, I don't know if you've seen the used car dealership in New Zealand.
No.
Well, there's a used car dealership in New Zealand, and they have three staff members who dance.
Oh my gosh.
And they dance well. Think Britney Spears in her Toxic era type of dancing. Very, very unexpected from three used car dealers in New Zealand. So I don't know how much they're selling in terms of cars, but I do know that their presence is growing, and I would have never looked twice. I mean, how, like, what am I gonna do at a used car dealership in New Zealand? I'm in Spain, but I tune in whenever I see them because they've made their employees part of their brand as well, and they've somehow combined music and culture and like that humor as well to bring more attention and eyes to their dealership. So maybe I'm not their target audience because of my location, but I'm sure if it's reaching Spain, I'm sure it's reaching some more people in New Zealand too. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you never know. You might want to relocate at some point, and they'll have. You already know who they are. So
I'm already tapped in. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Um, can you think of the opposite of the question I asked? And can you think of a company that is a more serious industry that tried to use humor and then it kind of flopped?
Oh gosh. I didn't have a specific example. Um,
Or maybe we can talk about how you know something has flopped. I mean, maybe that helps.
how you know something's flopped. Um, yeah, it's difficult because I don't. It is quite stressful when you're a social media manager because obviously you get that like instant serotonin boost of the likes and the comments and things when something does go viral. And it's really lovely. I think you know something's flopped when it could be a number of things, and again the kind of if you don't get the likes immediately, it's very easy to just say, "Oh my gosh, it's flopped," or if it doesn't get like the same amount of traction as like a post would usually do. I think another part of that would probably be that it's not reaching the target audience that you want it to reach, which is where the question of is it the most important thing to go viral comes into play, I think. Um, because that's obviously like a, a big thing that maybe people, leadership who just want to get eyes on their product, they'll say, oh, we need to make it go viral. But is it a successful moment if it goes viral but it's not reaching the right people, if it's reaching like an irrelevant audience and it's not aligned with brand goals? So there's a multifaceted answer to that, I think.
Okay, okay. So what I'm hearing is, in like on the surface, going viral is what people are trying to achieve, but it's not the end all and be all because reaching a million people when you only should be reaching a solid 5K who are actually going to turn, like they're actually going to convert, and that's the one you should be prioritizing, and you just have a whole bunch of other people who are there just in your
Yeah,
comments.
content in the past go viral and I've hated it because you do end up with people who just like it seems on the face of it like the stats are just like amazing and it makes my analytics look incredible for the month. The following month and it plummets is the worst. I hate that. But then also, yeah, again, like you say, those million people who've seen it, you just get loads of comments saying like, "Oh, I don't understand this," and it's like, well, you're not the person that I'm trying to reach. So I just clearly, on the face of it, yes, it looks great, but also I'm not. I just didn't enjoy it at all. Um, yeah.
So you hear that, people? Going viral has pros and cons, and maybe even more cons than we're willing to admit.
Mm.
Yeah. I also saw something recently that mentioned if you have your employees from your company um, on your social media, and by chance they end up going viral, to make sure that you're offering them extra support because going viral opens the floodgates to all sorts of comments on, oh, her voice is weird, or oh, his face looks strange, or oh, like things that are completely irrelevant to the video, but it can open the floodgates to a lot of unwanted, unwarranted comments as well. So again,
Lots of
go ahead.
Yeah, like online bullying. Like, I mean, we've seen it. Me and it's on off tangent, but I'll get back to it. But like, me and my sister were on TV a few years ago, and we got as in part of our contract, there was this section that was just like, do not look at social media, just don't pay any mind to anything because it does open those, yeah, like you say, those floodgates for like just trolls and like nasty comments and recently as well, I've been on Disney Talk for some reason. Some reason I keep coming across like Disney World, and the characters are really having their moments. Like the How to Train Your Dragon lot are really being filmed quite a lot, and there's like an evil queen that's being filmed quite a lot as well. And people even in the comments are saying like, do not just try and find out about these people's personal lives because they maybe will lose their jobs, or people are trying to find out who they actually are, and that's quite scary.
Yeah. So I mean, instead of trying to go viral, it may seem obvious, but let's just state it. What is a better goal to have?
I would say having a consistent and strong business impact should be the goal, because going viral again without aligning to brand or product is kind of like getting famous for tripping over your own shoelaces and ending up on like You've Been Framed or something. I think consistency is key. If those million people who you reach are all gonna be your target audience and they're all gonna convert or consider, great. But the likelihood is that they're not. So I would say having a goal of reaching the people that you want to reach and connecting with your actual target audience would be better.
Okay. Yeah. So there's no escaping it. I mean, when someone mentions social media, they think, "Oh, we want to go viral. Like, can you make this go viral?" Like, there's no escaping it. So that's why I do want to include that in here. But I do also want to add the caveat of if it's your employees or someone that you work with,
Yeah.
support them in that moment because they will need it. Someone who's been online for many, many years, they will need the support.
Mhm.
Also, remembering that virality doesn't always like lead to conversion, like on a one-to-one basis. It does not. There's a lot of people who you are not talking to who just happened upon your product. So it may help with brand awareness, but it doesn't always help with conversion. So having realistic expectations there. And the better alternative is something that's sustainable and scalable in the long run. But on the other hand, if you do manage to go viral, congratulations. How do you suggest people capitalize on that moment? Because a lot of times viral moments go viral specifically because it is a one-off thing where it's kind of like so surprising or so shocking or so random that people are like, ah, look at this. So you can't just keep being surprising and random and back to back to back, or people will see the pattern, right? So how do you suggest people capitalize on the virality when it does happen?
Yeah, obviously it's going to happen, but I think another, probably should have said, another mistake that brands make is not utilizing that moment. I think if you do go viral, you've got to be present. You can't just ghost. I think it's all about responding fast, maybe pin the post if it's relevant, create follow-up things, expand the conversation maybe with like Q&As, potentially PR moments if they're necessary, spin-off content. If it's on TikTok and people are commenting on the viral video, you could respond to the comment with another video or stitch other people's. I think essentially it's all about not letting that moment of attention vanish without deepening the relationship that you have with your customer. I have an example, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So the example that I wanted to share with you guys was hair syrup. So they're a UK brand who they're like a hair oil essentially, and they appeared on a UK program called Dragon's Den, which is kind of like Shark Tank for the US. They appeared in 2024, but ultimately didn't secure investment. And I thought they were really mean to her. They kind of said that it was a TikTok fad and like you wouldn't be able to create a business on TikTok. So the founder, Lucy, her experience on the show was a bit of a confidence knock, but using social media, she managed to turn that around. She turned it into positive content. So she kind of humorously addressed the feedback that she received. She created loads and loads of content and still like using that moment today, although sparingly, um, to just keep the momentum going. And then since then, significant growth in followers on TikTok, as well as like multiple PR moments, despite that rejection. And then recently, she's been stocked in Boots Pharmacy in the UK as well. So I just think I think that's a real testament to making sure that those viral moments don't go wasted.
Awesome. Thank you for that example. So, virality is not something that you can necessarily plan or create a strategy for, but if you do happen to come upon a viral moment, you can have a strategy as to how to optimize that. So maybe having that in your back pocket, for the rainy day or for a chance that you do end up going viral. Um, if you guys are out there still listening, feel free to leave an emoji in the comments because I like emojis. So leave me one of your favorites. Thank you so much. So when engagement is down, how do you diagnose the problem? What should people look for? And what's your approach to adjusting the strategy in real time? We hear the words vanity metrics thrown around a lot. So, what should people be looking at, the combination to know? And then, how do you know when it's not working? And how do you diagnose it and adjust?
Yeah, so I think it's so easy to blame the algorithm when something flops, like a change in the algorithm. And I have a lot of feelings about the term vanity metrics. I'll try not to go on a tangent too much. But I think when,
But we love tangents.
so essentially, I just don't think, I think if you're focused too much on the followers and the likes and whatever, I don't think that's great. But at the same time, getting more eyes, it depends on your goals. If the goal is for awareness, then it's not so vain to want followers and impressions and reach and comments. I think specifically the comments and shares are where it's at, specifically on places like Instagram, where Adam Mosseri has come out and said that shares equal better for the algorithm or whatever. I just have a lot of feelings towards it. Um, yeah, so I think when the engagement drops, I wouldn't just blame a changing algorithm. I would kind of, because I have a very analytical mind, which I think is important in social media as well, to have that nice mix of analytics and creativity. I would tend to go deep into why. I would look at the timing of the post, maybe message clarity. Was it clear what you were trying to say? Message fatigue, posting patterns. Has your audience changed? Is your content mix a bit off? I think my advice would to always take a step back and have a look at what you've been posting, review the metrics, and test something different that still aligns with what your ultimate goals are.
Okay, thank you. Message fatigue. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, if you're just kind of repeating yourself over and over again, say like, buy now, and like all your posts are like, sale. Um, Maybe you won't have it in Spain, but there's a sofa shop in the UK called DFS, and it seems that every single month of the year they have their clearance sale, and it'll be like last minute sale, and it's just kind of a bit of a joke now that like none of their stuff is ever really not on sale.
So, is there a sweet spot in terms of the type of messaging you should be putting out? I mean, I got my start in email marketing. So, in email marketing, we talk a lot about like here's a give, here's a give, here's value, here's an ask, and then you can do give, give, value, ask. Like, so is there, when it comes to social for brands, is there a way to kind of avoid message fatigue and avoid these types of situations?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of percentages out there. Um, I would say make sure maybe about, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but if I was going to, I'd probably do like maybe 60% might be like awareness content, maybe 25 would be consideration, and then the last would be conversion. I just think you don't want to be, again, it goes back to like, you don't want to be talking about yourself all the time because customers will be like, well, why should I care? Like, you want, yeah, you want to kind of get them to feel like you understand their problems, but without being too direct about buy our stuff. Do you know what I mean? No.
Yes. No, I do. I do. I do know what you mean. There is subtlety, for sure.
Mm, subtlety, that's key.
um, so, what's your approach when a post bombs and you thought it was great? Um, how do you know if it was the message or how it was conveyed? Now, I remember you saying if something kind of, if engagement is low overall or in general, don't automatically assume it's the algorithm. That is a very easy scapegoat. I don't want to say the L word, but it can be perceived by some as a little lazy. But it's not always wrong either, but it shouldn't be your first go-to. You mentioned the time you're posting, you mentioned the type of content you're posting, you mentioned if you're targeting the right people, all of these things. So I guess just going further into that, you have all of this data in front of you. You have how many people saw it, you have how many people clicked, how many people shared, reposted, commented. Um, you know how long your designer spent making it. You know your intentions, and if it flops, how do you then know, okay, it was the messaging or it was how we tried to convey the message, the
Mm.
format even?
Yeah, I think it is difficult to know, like, even when you do have all that data, because it could be any one number of things. I think the key is to don't toss the idea if it has flopped. Test it again with some minor tweaks. Um, I did paid social for a little bit, and every time, like, I had a look at paid social maybe once a week, and if something wasn't performing as well as I'd hoped, I would change one thing at a time. Hopefully not the budget too much, but change things like the creative that we were using. And then maybe the next week I'd look into it a bit more and think, oh, well, it's still not performing as well. Maybe I'll change the messaging a bit. And it's all about testing with like small tweaks, but not too big that, say you've changed everything, you don't know exactly what it was that wasn't working. I would just treat it as a learning curve, which is very easy to say right now, but I know how heartbreaking it is when you put so much time and effort into something and it just doesn't do well. It's devastating, but try and treat it as a learning curve.
I don't know why my mind immediately went to skincare, where it's like you don't want to change several products and add several new products at the same time because then you don't know if you're having a reaction to one or the other. So yeah, I guess to sum up what you're saying is small tweaks that you can kind of literally pinpoint a
Mhm.
week, but maybe a week of time, 2 weeks of time, do you think is enough to kind of test? Or do you think it needs more? Excuse me.
I think maybe for organic, it would probably need a bit more. I think the paid social, I think time was of the essence with a few campaigns, so it was very. I needed to do things quite quickly.
Okay. All right. We're getting some good questions in the comments. I don't want to ignore them.
Ah,
So, what about the recommendation to have a CTA on every single post? Is it bad to do that? Is it too much? How do we direct our audience to where to go? You guys, I am not wearing my glasses, so that's why you see me. um, how do we direct our audience to where to go? Hook them otherwise. Okay, how do we direct our audience where to go or hook them otherwise?
Yeah, so
CTAs.
I think it comes back to that kind of storytelling element of marketing. I think obviously we've all got goals to hit, and maybe your manager has said we need to get this much traffic from social each month. I would say if you have too many, it's got to be clear what you want from your audience. And I think obviously having a clear call to action is really important. But at the same time, I just wouldn't, I don't want to, the pressure's on, but like recommending is quite scary. But I just don't want to say that you shouldn't. I think CTAs on every single post are probably quite fatiguing for the audience. Like, you'll probably be there, like, don't tell me what to do. So I think it's all about kind of a nice funnel mix of, again, that awareness, consideration, conversion. We say it at my work, like, no one really cares about your company until you make them care about your company. So it's all about the awareness and why should they click on the link? Why should they join the webinar? And it's, you have to kind of give them a bit of information that makes them care before you tell them where to go, if that helps. Um, and when it comes to hooking them in, I think storytelling's a really good way to do it. We got clients at the moment who they want to get more apprentices for their business. And the way to do that isn't necessarily to be like, we've got apprenticeships available at our business. Click the link here. We tell a lot of stories from the founder. Yeah, we tell a lot of stories from the founder, about some journeys of the apprentices that he's managed, why they started the apprenticeships in the first place, to make the business seem like, and it's a really nice place, I've met them, but make it seem like the place where apprentices want to go. That's why they should care. This is why they should consider this particular company as a place to do their apprenticeship. And then later along the line, hey, by the way, we're hiring.
Totally, totally. This is a very undercooked thought that just came to my head while you were talking. But human beings, yes, at times we're complex, but we're also very, very simple. So I just, and while you were talking, I imagined someone in a circle, like one person standing alone in a circle, and what happens around them is what's going to motivate them. So when you mentioned like showing a story of like a success story from someone doing something well, and the apprenticeship thing. So like they see that, and they see like a close friend is like really into ceramics recently. So they're like, oh, they're doing ceramics. That's cool. That's one touch point. And then they see someone else and they're like learning how to paint from scratch, and they're redecorating their home because they just bought this Italian villa, and they have another touch point. And then they see they see the things that are happening around them that slightly influence them, that just kind of put the product or put the service on their radar. These touch points, there might need to be several of them in order to get them to take an action, but you really are kind of building a case, but like building a world around them. That way, when they see your paint advertised or when they see your ceramic studio pop up on their timeline, you're not just saying, come to my ceramic shop because we have cool clay. It's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. You're selling people a transformation. You're selling them a different version of themselves, a better version of themselves. You're selling them the thing that they admire about their friends, their family, their peers, their superiors at work. Like, you're always trying to sell a story because that is what makes human beings human. It's not like if you need a hammer, you just go buy a hammer. If you need a pen, you just go buy a pen. But if you want a special kind of pen, you need to see how it writes, and you need to see the story that it's telling. It's very different. Again, it's simple, but it can also be complex, because when you have goals to hit, when you have employees that you need to pay, you have clients that are demanding, it can be very tempting to just be direct and say, buy this product now, it's good, trust us. That's not. That's not a brand voice, and that's definitely not the best way to go about it. So having your brand guidelines, knowing who you are or who you strive to sound like, will help you understand how people will most likely perceive you. And from there, you can build an entire rich voice and narrative that will reach them in a way that just buy this now could never. And it does take time and patience, though. Yeah,
Yeah, time and patience.
I want to throw that in there. We had another question. Oh, I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce this properly. What do you think about using the, I think it's called Young, Jungin, Carl Jungian? It's Young, right?
To be really honest with you guys, I really don't know what this is. Um,
Here, I'll type it for you just in case you want to check it out.
Thank you.
What?
Yeah, I'm Googling frantically. Um, oh, like
Is it using psychology? Is that what it is?
psychology, I think. I think psychology, this is probably not going to be a great answer, I'm not going to lie, but I think psychology and marketing do go hand in hand. Um, I think if you are looking into like patterns of behavior and how humans think, it's probably a good idea to think about that when it comes to advertising. But again, I have never done a marketing course, I've never done a psychology course, but I think I do believe that they go hand in hand.
Well, there's a whole other sector of marketing called neuromarketing, isn't there?
Is
That's
there?
something. Yeah, neuromarketing is something I've heard a bit
Wow,
about. In fact, I know someone who's doing a master's right now in neuromarketing,
that's very
basically
cool.
trying to understand why people make the choices that they make. I mean, think about like, for example, cereal boxes in the store, why they put those in the middle versus the ones on the top versus the ones on the bottom, and how to influence choices.
Right, okay. Yeah, yeah, then I think it does make sense. I think it does work in today's socials if that's what we're talking about. Because again, it's thinking like, yeah, if we're thinking, why do people make the choices that they make? I think it comes back to what Danny was saying about it's you're building a life for yourself. When people sell you a product, when Kylie Jenner sells you a lip gloss or whatever, you're not thinking like, oh, I really want that lip gloss. You're kind of more thinking, I want that life. I want that lifestyle that she has. So you buy the lip gloss or whatever. So I do think it still has a place in today's socials. You
Totally.
just have to think about like influencer marketing as well. Um, Even like the most obvious from outfit of the day is to come with me on a brand trip or something. I think it still works quite well.
Yes, yes. So when a brand voice isn't necessarily landing, but the leadership team loves it. What's the best way to communicate the situation to them?
Right. Here's how to handle this because I've been in this situation. I think again it's all about data. Um, so start with the receipts. Start with the data that you have. Let's say I don't know, engagements down, and then run a tone experiment, just a short one over a one campaign thing. Uh, I would go back to them with empathy and the evidence that you've collected, and then frame the feedback as opportunity. So what that looks like in a real life scenario would be essentially like data in action. So say you go engagements dropped by 20% while we've had this tone shift, or people just aren't sharing the content as much but they're screenshotting things instead, or something like we're seeing confused replies and off-brand comments on our content. Right, cool. Run a tone experiment over just like, yeah, a short one campaign. Frame it as we're validating direction. We're not replacing the direction that we were going in. We're just kind of validating what we were already doing. And then maybe if we need to make a few changes, let's try it. A/B test to voice style types, and then let the performance decide. And then talking to your boss about it, think about saying like, yeah, we totally get why you think Duolingo's tone feels really exciting to a lot of people. That's why they're successful. But a lot of people are their specific audience. For us, this is where we're seeing the disconnect with the audience that we're trying to reach. And then frame it as the opportunity. So say it gives us a chance to reshape the brand and not dull it down, or like not reshape but like sharpen it essentially. So yeah, tiny tests, tiny wins, big trust.
Okay. Yeah. And start with what you can measure already to show. You said
Yeah,
start with the receipts.
always.
And again, tiny tests, meaning testing one or two things at a time, no more.
Hmm.
We're not going to just uphaul everything and then we'll never know what was actually working or not.
Yeah.
So I know this is an important question for decision makers, and we are running out of time.
God.
So, how do voice and tone on social media um, lead back or relate to business goals like trust, conversion, or customer loyalty, in your opinion?
Yeah. So it's a shame my presentation, but you'll see it after. I had a nice little
Sorry.
funnel to show you. No, it's so fine. It's my fault. But essentially, obviously, this is like the driving question. But at the awareness level and going into the consideration level, the voice builds trust. So that consistency that you have with your voice creates a familiarity and builds the credibility that you need, because people trust brands who know who they are and know who their audience is. So that business outcome at the very top and like gearing into the middle will be more follows, more shares, more reach, probably those vanity metrics. And the trust is the first step in the funnel. When you're going down to the consideration phase and the conversion phase, a good voice makes value feel obvious. So the messaging should feel smooth, and those call to actions that we were talking about earlier should feel natural instead of demanding. So the business outcome there would be a better click through rate for your boss, a lower bounce rate, and higher intent for the audience, because people are more likely to buy from brands that they feel get them. And then coming back round, it also creates that loyalty. So a memorable voice equals an emotional connection, and it becomes part of the reason why people stay and why they defend you online should things go sideways. Um, so then that leads to things like more user generated content, organic referrals to maybe their friends, like, hey, this party class was really good, let's go together, and repeat customers as well. Yeah, there's a lot of information, but essentially, voice doesn't equal fluff, it's function, and it's the kind of emotional shortcut to trust, action, and retention.
Okay, thank you. We had a couple questions submitted via the sign up form, and I also want to do like a rapid fire with you to end everything. This was not in the script, y'all. I did not tell her about rapid fire, but I feel an urge to just do a rapid fire. I don't know. I like understanding your brain. So for some of the questions,
Someone has
um,
to.
um, any tips for B2B in a restricted space, specifically the cannabis space, and conversely, a saturated space?
I don't know a lot about that. It's still illegal in the UK. Yeah, I don't really know the laws behind it in the US. Um, I just think maybe if it's restricted, I don't know how restricted those things are, but I just feel like I'm not the best person to answer this. I'm so sorry.
I don't.
Um,
I'm not sure either. The first thing that came to my mind was building private communities
mm,
that are a bit less public, but like for example, I don't know if this goes against their does this go against their guidelines? A circle community or a Slack community or some type of private group where within that group, of course, you can establish how your brand presents itself instead of being so public. about it. I'm not sure what LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, I'm not sure what kind of rules they have around this sector. Also depends
I
on the
think,
country as well.
yeah, I think LinkedIn, sorry, might have something to say about it because they might think it's like a pod or whatever. I think the way that you might be able to get around it could be like Instagram. What do they call them? The little, yeah, the communities that they've built, broadcast channels. That could be a good way, but honestly, if I think of anything, maybe I can send some answers to the chat
Yeah.
afterwards.
Okay. And on the other hand, a saturated space. How do you go about differentiating your brand voice in an oversaturated space?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I think oversaturated could mean things like beauty. So we've seen like the rise of like road skin and oh god, that's really, it just escaped my brand now. But
Elf
so
beauty?
no, because they've just taken over. I meant Selena Gomez's brand,
Rare beauty.
Rare Beauty. So they kind of like, I feel like they rose up at the same time with kind of like very, they have different aesthetics and different tones of voice. So I think it all comes back to establishing your mission, your vision. And this will probably, it won't be the social media person that does this. It'll be probably yeah, like brand strategists or even like the CEO, the founder of the company. But it would all come back to who you're trying to reach in an oversaturated space. Maybe just get creative. I think there's been some really creative things that have happened in the past few months, PR stunts. Um, but yeah, I think it would just all come back to knowing who you are and not trying to copy anyone else, because I think that's when things get boring.
That's when you get more of the same, for sure.
Yeah.
I like this next question. They said, I'd love to understand your creative process from ideation to editing to ensure personal consistency. Fun fact, I was a fan of Katie's before I pitched this webinar to her. I was secretly lurking, looking at all of her posts on LinkedIn and being like, how does she know? How did she come up with that? That is so funny.
Oh,
And her presence grew so quickly that I was like, oh, yeah, she has something to say. This isn't an accident. So this person would like to know. And this person, I want to know, but I did not submit this question. But they want to know too. What is your
um,
creative process?
well, fun fact about me is I've fallen off LinkedIn recently, so my creative process has dwindled due to just burnout. But essentially, what it looks like is, again, I have a Notion page that, so I'm a social media manager trying to connect with other social media managers. I think for me, luckily, I don't have to put too much pressure on it because all I really want to do is make connections and make friends. But being a social media manager already is quite lucky because then I know what I struggle with and I know what I enjoy about social media. I like making people laugh. That's one of my kind of, I don't know, USP. I just like making people laugh. I found out that I could do it and I was like, hey, I really like that feeling. And so a lot of my content is kind of relatable, sarcastic, usually, hopefully funny. I don't really know. I also, on LinkedIn, probably a couple months ago, I posted something about having, someone called it something. I didn't realize that this was, it's like an ikigai or something, spheres of content types. So knowing oh here, how to know what to post on LinkedIn. So in the center, what should you post about? Above, I put what you love. To the side, what you're good at. Underneath, what's needed and what you care about most. So on mine, I love having fun. I love being relatable. I love solving problems for people. Um, what I'm good at, hopefully social media, given that I'm a social media manager. I'm creative and I know that I'm good at data as well. What's needed in LinkedIn specifically, I think, is more humor, debatable, and advice for people starting out. And then what I care about most is people, strategy, and having a work life balance, which is why I haven't been on LinkedIn for about 3 weeks. Um, so that's kind of like the creative process. But I think, again, it all comes down to really defining my values, even as an individual, from like a personal brand perspective, my values, my mission, my vision for myself, and then just get posting, really.
Awesome. Would it be possible to include a blank template of that in your presentation for people?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they might get some use from that. I mean, you can do it for yourself or for your company brand, but I think that's a helpful exercise. This person says, we want to share the message that we're here to help the world. How do we go about sharing that message without coming across as fake?
Mm, that's difficult because I think not a lot of brands, but I guess from like a charity perspective, what do you mean when you say like you're here to help the world? What's the specific mission that you have? Is it a climate thing? Is it sustainability? Is it world peace? Um, what is it really? Um, I think defining maybe a few things that are just like the most important to you will be really helpful, but to not sound fake, probably put maybe a lot of educational content out there, show that you know what you're talking about would be really good. Say if there's breaking news, say if you are like a climate charity, if there's breaking news over if an oil rig's been approved, or if someone is suing a country and they've won for climate or whatever. Um, I think that educational content will show people that you really do know what you're talking about and you care about what you're talking about. And again, that story driven marketing is probably quite important for this as well, because you can maybe showcase volunteers, why it's important to you, why you're doing what you're doing, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Is that
I
helpful?
agree. I think definitely putting faces to the volunteers, the people who work with you, sharing their whys. I think that's really helpful because it creates that human connection. And you mentioned something about like, oh, an oil rig, blah, 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 or this happened or this happened. I used to be really into those good news feeds where they just constantly only shared like current events and current news, but it was all good news. I think having that along with your messaging that you're trying to change the world and also sharing real positive stories that are in the news that the world is changing for the better will only validate your claim that you're trying to make things better. Obviously, not taking credit for it, but I mean, creating that space where when they know they enter that space, they're going to get some good news about the world being a better place and they can begin to make that connection with like your part in it as well. It's something I would suggest. Okay, so we had a bumpy start, so I'm not gonna like cut it off right away, but I know we have like just two more questions here and then maybe rapid fire. So, um, difference between brand voice, founder's voice, and personal brand. Um, yes. What is the difference between brand voice, founder voice, and personal brand? And I'm assuming personal brand would probably refer to the employees at the company.
Yeah, so that's a good one because I work for an agency now, so we um, have the company page. Has it gone robotic again? Okay, good. We have the company page that we post on. We have usually the founder or at least someone quite high up in the company, and then we'll have like another employee. So this is actually quite good. So the company page, the voice for the company page, I think the difference between that and the founder would be it's more, I want to say more of a collective. You're more talking about maybe what the company does, or but in a that same kind of awareness consideration to conversion way, but in a maybe a bit it's a bit more like related to the company wide. Whereas the founder, I feel like the founder and the personal brand kind of overlap a little bit because the founder brand probably is a personal brand. So the founder would probably be talking about maybe 4 or 5 pillars that they care about, say their founder journey, their vision. Maybe they're uh, a mechanical engineering company and they care about sustainability and they care about innovation. So, or yeah, that kind of thing. So you'd have those kind of four pillars and just theme content around that. The employee brand, the personal brand. It's funny because I have a personal brand, but I don't really talk about my work very much on social media. I talk about things that I care about. But if you're thinking a personal brand to help the company that you're working for, think about the specific role that you have in the company, but also maybe things outside of the company that make you good at what you do. Um, so if I was an employee, I mean, I am an employee, but like as a social media manager, things that I do in my personal life that make me good at what I do, I paint quite a lot, and that makes me quite a creative person. Or um, I don't know, I build things a lot, and that makes me analytical, or yeah, that kind of thing. So I think those overlap quite a bit. I hope that answers your question. I know it's really all
I
over the
think
place.
I think it answers it. Sure. So the company voice is more of a collective. It's more of a generalized. But when you start branching off into personal brands, whether it be someone high up like the CEO, CFO, CMO, etc., it's okay to start including pillars, one or two of which are personal, things that don't directly promote the company, but complement by saying, "This is what I do outside of work that helps me be better at work," or "This is something I'm interested in that taught me this, and I found a way to relate this to that."
Yeah.
I
I
wish.
also
Oh, sorry.
sorry. I would also use content pillars for company pages as well, but maybe make them more like testimonials or case studies or about the company. And I think it also depends on what platform you're on. Because say you're on TikTok, I mean, it's still like showcasing the employees, but there's a brand called Sisters and Seekers who like frequently have videos of their employees just doing fun things at work, essentially. Um, I think they all overlap, honestly, but there's slight differences between the three.
Okay. Okay. So really quickly, if someone just came across this video and they skipped to the very end, what is the one thing you want them to get out of this conversation? The one main takeaway about finding your brand voice in social media?
Oh God.
No,
Um,
no pressure.
about finding your brand voice, I think that you just, no matter how kind of cool or I don't know, no matter how go with the flow vibes you think your brand is, you need some sort of brand guidelines. And that can start with a real simple starter pack of, uh, yeah, like who you are, your vision, your mission, and you can go deeper into it from there.
Okay. And what are some brands right now that are on your radar because you like what they're doing? Just like one or two.
Mm. I do really like hair syrup quite a lot. I often think that as a marketer, I'm immune to influencer marketing, but I just am ready to buy. I just really like what they do. I also, who else do I like? Oh, really put me on the spot. Oh my gosh, what are they called? There's a really nice like slow fashion company that I'm really enjoying at the moment. It'll come back to me. Um, but yeah, just anyone really that's kind of getting outside the box a little bit. They're not limiting themselves to what they think they should be doing, um, and just getting creative with it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Where can the people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. And
Awesome.
that's
Only there.
I was like, I tried TikTok, but I just don't want to advertise that right now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Katie, for your time. Thank you for everyone who watched it, whether live or you're watching it after the fact. I really appreciate it. And if you have more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. We can always circle back and answer them. But thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, guys. Bye.